The type of tenor who usually gets a soprano is a lyric tenor.
Yes, yes.
Refined, beautiful, passionate, often in Italian repertoire, very Italianate, a very distinctive Mediterranean, energized, warm sound.
Ardent, all of those things. The romantic lead, really.
Yeah.
And across a wide spectrum of centuries of music.
Yes.
It is the he gets the girl.
Yes. In just about every musical nationality too, in the Russian repertoire, in the French repertoire, in the Italian repertoire, German repertoire. And there are so many examples of wonderful roles for lyric tenor. Tamino in the Magic Flute, for example.
One of my favorite phrases to describe any singer is this tear in the voice or cry in the voice. And it's that somehow tenors have this ability to, there's a virility in what they bring to what they're doing that's because of the way the sound is produced. And
there's a kind of vulnerability as well, isn't there, or something?
Yes.
That really...
Yeah, it's that sense of, you feel the vulnerability, exactly, but it's because there's so much risk involved. Mm-hmm. When a soprano sings a bad note, it's probably unattractive. When a tenor sings a bad note, everybody knows because it's cracked or split.
Right.
So the audience is excited because they know they're gripping.
Danger there,
there's danger,
yeah.
exactly. Yes. And the virtuosity of that as well, a high note. There's a reason why in restaurants across the world you will hear a tenor before you would hear any other voice type.
Yes.
People
with the
love
big
it.
money notes, as
That's
it's called.
right. Yeah.
And one of the great examples of a lyric tenor romantic lead is Massenet's Werther, needing a rather heavier weight tenor than is sometimes the case.
At times, yes.
Yeah.
But also requiring great delicacy in moments, yes.
But the most famous aria, of course, is Nessun Dorma, because of the World Cup and Luciano Pavarotti, but I'd say it's probably the most recognizable piece for tenor around the world.
But it's rarely a lyric tenor who could sing the role of Calàf in Turandot.
Right. But everyone
Not necessarily
sings
that aria,
yes.
but the role of Calàf is really for a dramatic tenor.
Yes. And not easy to cast.
Not easy to cast as a result.
Yeah, whereas one thinks of dramatic tenors more in terms of the German repertoire, on the whole, I would say.
Right.
But then there are some examples of Italian repertoire, like, for example, Radamés in Aida, like maybe Manrico in Trovatore,
It's
like
heavier.
Calàf. Even Cavaradossi in Tosca needs a weight of voice that wouldn't be necessary for someone singing Tamino,
of course.
Or the French repertoire.
But if you think back to the Baroque and to Mozart, it is a much more lyric sound. And I wonder why in the 19th century with Wagner and Strauss then, composers decided they wanted a heavier weighted sound. I mean, it's an interesting
well,
change.
I suppose it mirrors in a way the kind of the orchestra was developing, the kind of power and richness of orchestral texture kind of forced us to look for a new kind of tenor.
And occasionally there are roles that can be sung by the full range of tenor types, from lyric to dramatic. One thinks of the role of Peter Grimes, the title role, written for a truly lyric tenor, but adopted by dramatic tenors. So Peter Pears, for whom the role was written, had a comparatively light, albeit well-projected voice. And now, I suppose, one thinks of John Vickers as one of the most famous proponents of the title role of Peter Grimes.
Britten hated it, you know that.
Yes, yes.
That right?
Fascinatingly, he
I
hated
wonder,
it.
too, if in the 19th century, the fascination with Greek mythology also, and the hero, I wonder if that brought on a sort of more stentorian color.
Well, I guess that's, what we were saying is why big heavy tenors are called Helden tenors.
Exactly.
The heroic voices.
Exactly.
And I suppose one thinks of the German repertoire, one thinks of the great Wagner Helden tenor parts as being the ultimate examples of that sort of voice type.
Yes.
Siegfried, Tristan.
Yes.
And a lot of the role of Tristan is actually in the baritone register. It just also goes up into the tenor register.
That's right. So, well, and very more often than not, Helden tenors have to have a really strong middle range, don't they? I think.
A dark sound.
Yes.
For the orchestration again, Although in Bayreuth, when you think about it, and I love to remind people that there were no Wagner singers at all when Wagner was writing. They were singing Mozart and
that's right.
other repertoire. So.
And of course, actually, the thing about the Bayreuth Festspielhaus is that, for the most part, the orchestra can play as loud as it likes, and it won't drown the singers because
there are no balance problems.
Yeah, Bayreuth can take much more lyric voices.
Yes, and I read somewhere that the great German baritone Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau nearly recorded the role of Siegmund, which is a tenor role, in the Schulte Ring. It's been written about, and so it's actually something that is on record. And it was not that the top note of the role, which I think is a G, was any problem for Fischer-Dieskau. It was the tessitura of the role.
Yes. Tessitura is hugely important. When I choose repertoire, it's based, besides whether I love it or not, it's based on range to some degree. And people think it's only range, but it's also based on tessitura.
And what does that mean?
Tessitura is the mean range. So meaning, where does it lie? Where are you singing most consistently? And is that comfortable? And is the writing comfortable? Blanche Dubois, for instance, is all over the place, but they're in short bursts of difficulty, so there's a lot of rest in between. Otherwise, I couldn't sing it. I had a very interesting experience also. I was in Mexico City, and we talk about tenors again. This whole Latin influence on our contemporary tenor voice. There have been so many Spanish-speaking tenors, and I came after the concert, and they said, well, we're going to take you to some area on our way to the dinner. And I see all these people on the street, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are we in a, what kind of area are they taking me to? And there are all these people standing, hawking something on the street. They were all male singers, lined up in full costume and regalia with the guitars, mariachi singers.
I know exactly where you
who
mean.
were out there hoping to be hired to come and sing at whatever party, and they were all magnificent tenors.
It's the Plaza Garibaldi in Mexico City.
And it's charmed.
It's one of the great cultural phenomenons, because as you say,
nowhere else in the world.
Nowhere else in the world. And they're lining up hoping to be hired by people to bring them home to serenade their loved ones.
And they're not amplified. In fact, one quite famous tenor today said to me, he was at a party once, and the mariachi band had come in, and the guy who sang was so phenomenal, and they said, come on, get up and sing. I won't say who it is, because he said, no way am I following that. So it is interesting to me how certain voice types, why English speakers have been so great at French repertoire, and why most of our tenors now, many of them are Spanish speaking.